So for more reaction, it's a pleasure to welcome Hillel Neuer, Executive Director of United Nations Watch, joining us from Jerusalem. So the ICJ is dismissing Israel's argument that UNRWA is not neutral. Your organization conducted a report, 200 pages or so, exposing how UNRWA knowingly employs Hamas terror chiefs to run their schools and their staff. So Hillel, both can't be true. Your response to this advisory opinion?
Look, if the ICJ says they can't find evidence that UNRWA lacks impartiality and neutrality, it means they weren't looking. Because as you indicated, we just released a report of 200 pages of evidence showing that the heads of UNRWA's staff union, 13,000 staff in Gaza, was Suhail al-Hindi. He's in the picture right there meeting the Iranian foreign minister. This guy is the head of was the head of 13,000 UNRWA staff and sitting on the Hamas Politburo. He's one of the Hamas terror chiefs, and he wasn't hiding it. The pictures that you're seeing are all public pictures, posted in many cases by the UNRWA teachers and union leaders themselves, whether in Gaza or in Lebanon. The head of the UNRWA teachers union in Lebanon, Fathi Sharif, was the head of Hamas in Lebanon. It's astonishing to say this, but the Hamas terror chief in Lebanon was the head of the UNRWA teachers union. And they knew it. These people weren't hiding it. For at least 10 years on Facebook, our report, available at unwatch.org, shows how they openly posted, boasted, and were very proud of the fact that they were members and leaders of Hamas. And it's not just two people. We have a network map coming out next, which will show 500 UNRWA staff members and their links to terrorism, whether either members of terrorism, Hamas terror chiefs, and the like, or calling to murder Jews. So the notion that there's no evidence is frankly just absurd.
Well, then why is the court not satisfied with this evidence? And how does it get away with ignoring what you've just shown on the screen as we're speaking right now?
Well, they shouldn't get away with it. And sadly, there are many in the world who want to endorse a false narrative that UNRWA is just a few bad apples. But the opposite is true. Indeed, the ICJ opinion today says that when UNRWA was faced with criticism and problems, they immediately took action. For example, says the ICJ, they appointed a commission of inquiry headed by, or a commission headed by Catherine Colonna, the former French foreign minister. But this Colonna report was a travesty. The authors of the report, before the report was issued, said the whole point of the report was to allow donor states to save face and climb down a ladder. In other words, the whole point of this so-called independent review by Catherine Colonna was a sham review designed, orchestrated, tailored to produce a false conclusion that everything is fine at UNRWA. They even repeat, the ICJ repeats the absurd claim by the Colonna report that UNRWA has more mechanisms for neutrality than any other organization. And to me, when I spoke in the Dutch parliament, actually in The Hague, I said that, they may have many mechanisms, but Stalin, in his Soviet constitution of the 1930s, had many provisions in the constitution that spoke of freedom and liberty and so forth. But in reality, he was murdering millions of people. So UNRWA may have mechanisms for neutrality, but the truth is that they have thousands who either belong to Hamas or are supporting Hamas. And as I said, leaders of UNRWA are Hamas terror chiefs. Two of them we named, Suhail al-Hindi in Gaza, Fathi Sharif in Lebanon. The proof is compelling, and the ICJ should not be able to get away with this.
Just some of the reaction coming through. We saw Lindsey Graham posting that when it comes to Israel, the ICJ is a joke and should be treated as such. That said, how damaging is this for Israel, especially in the court of public opinion? And what realistically can you do now when you hear this kind of finding coming out of a court of this so-called standing?
Well, look, the think tank Foundation for the Defense of Democracies yesterday warned that an information operation, an information op, was going to be coming out by UNRWA and Hamas with this opinion today. And the goal of UNRWA is to insinuate themselves back into the structures in Gaza, because Israel was able to shut out UNRWA to a large degree. They're not involved in giving out the aid. They haven't been very active at all. And now they're trying to come back to run the schools. And I think it's very important that the Trump administration understand that their peace plan, Article 1, calls for de-radicalization. Article 1, you cannot de-radicalize Gaza if you allow UNRWA, which is infested with Hamas terror chiefs, to take over the schools. Again, that will just guarantee more war and more hate.
Difficult to comprehend how one manages to de-radicalize if this is the case, and it is ongoing as we speak. Always appreciate your insights, Hillel Neuer, Executive Director at United Nations Watch, live from Jerusalem. Thank you so much.
Thank you.